Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. The New York Jets are coming off of their week 1 loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, 34-32. We broke down earlier in the week just some of the gut reactions to it. Now that I've had some time to react and take in the data and watch the film again. I only have a few more takeaways from what was a really heartbreaking loss at MetLife Stadium. I want to start with just the reception Jets fans have gotten from both the national media, the local media, and then, just Jets fans themselves about how the reaction was to this loss. Jets fans are not throwing anyone on their shoulders and celebrating that loss. That was a brutal loss. That is a game they should have won. You have a turnover, on the special teams play that leads to 2 touchdowns within 50 seconds. That's inexcusable. That's not how you win football games. But there's no way you leave that game not feeling motivated by how the offense looks. The weaknesses are the things that we knew they would be. We knew that the secondary was going to be a problem, that Tony Adams has reached his ceiling, that, Stevens is someone who, when overexposed, can be an issue. And overall, they lost a game in which they give up a 60-yard field goal to a really good kicker at MetLife Stadium. This is in no way a celebration. I don't think Jets fans feeling good about the loss means that they're celebrating or having a loser's mentality. It's Jets fans just want to see how this team can be different than teams of the past, and in particular how this regime responds to losses and responds to adversity compared to the Robert Saleh era Jets. And what I do like is right away they release Xavier Gipson. You never want to see a guy lose his job, but this is part of the sport. This is part of the game. Was it maybe 1 week too late? Yes. Would they have won that game if Xavier Gipson was released in the offseason and, Pritchett or someone else is returning that kick? Maybe, but they brought in a guy who's returned kicks before successfully. They gave him another shot. He tripped on a return that I think would have been a touchdown, and then he fumbles the ball and it cost the Jets the game. So Xavier Gipson's gonna be looking for another team. That's part of life. But what I like about that is that's Aaron Glenn showing accountability and saying, hey, this isn't good enough, and because of that, we need to move on for you. That is a gear shift for this franchise. I think the feeling that Saleh last year coddled players too much, I think all of that was true. And listen, when you're on a winning team, then it works. It doesn't matter. But on a losing team, on a team that, had no shows a lot and that got blown out a lot and just seemed unprepared and also led the league in penalties, you want to see accountability. Aaron Glenn also spoke to the fact that, yes, there were some big penalties, the pass interference on Stevens, the 15 yards on Quincy Williams hit out of bounds. Those are issues, but they only had 1 pre-snap penalty. That was a focal point. And overall, the Jets played a relatively clean game. The one big mistake led the way for the Steelers to score points, and on we go. So with Xavier Gipson being released, they signed Isaiah Williams. Williams was on the Lions and Bengals last year. He averaged 33.8 yards per return. 4 of those came with the Bengals in the last game of the season against the Steelers last year. He also has 11 punt returns where he averages around 9 yards per return. I don't know if he'll step in right away and become the punt returner, but we're going to see, especially if Kene Nwangwu is out, and right now he hasn't practiced all week after hurting his hamstring. It's going to be a mix of Arian Smith, Isaiah Davis, and Isaiah Williams on kick return. My guess is that Isaiah Davis gets the bulk of the punt returns. I think they want to find opportunities to get the ball in his hands anyway. He did return a few kicks. He did return a few kicks last season as well. I think he had a bobble or 2 on a couple last year, but he's a playmaker. They want to get the ball in his hands. So the biggest change up so far from the issues from last week are definitely the returner with Gipson being out. The next thing I'm interested in seeing is how are they going to shake up the secondary? Brandon Stevens was bad. Sauce Gardner was great, and as great as Sauce Gardner was, Stevens was that bad. He drops an interception that some people are saying might have been a pick 6, but either way, it's in his hands. He's kind of falling down and tripped, and he drops the ball. He gets a pass interference call on him. But to me, the bigger issue is Tony Adams as a safety. I know Malachi Moore is a rookie. I know that he's still not as refined as maybe a Tony Adams is, but we know exactly who Tony Adams is. Now's the time to bring in a guy who played over 60 games at Alabama, who can be a big hitter. We've seen him turn the ball over. It just needs a little juice next to Andre Cisco in the secondary. Tony Adams played 100% of the defensive snaps. That cannot be the case on Sunday. Some other notes, Mason Taylor is still hurt right now. Taylor, I called Ruckert tight end 1 on the Reaction podcast earlier this week. Based on snap count, Mason Taylor was the starting tight end in the tight end 1. He had more snaps, but Ruckert was more efficient on offense. He had a couple of catches. Both were nice plays. He also was blocking really well on the run game. So with Taylor hurt, I would expect Ruckert to get the bulk of snaps at tight end. And if Taylor can't play at all, look for Jelani Woods and Stone Smart to get a little bit more burn. Some of the positives that have only looked better as the week has gone on. Armand Menbu, the highest rated rookie and the highest graded offensive lineman. Week 1, he was phenomenal. He had 0 pressures against him. That includes around a dozen one-on-one snaps against TJ Watt. He did not allow a pressure. Olufashinu was fantastic as well. He graded out as one of the better tackles last week. And what I think was even most important is that Tippmann looked really good at guard. So you now have a guard and 2 tackles who are young and looking really strong. I think Tippmann is going to stay at guard. I think that is his better position. We talked about it previously, how he's had a hard time snapping the ball. I think him at center has come to an end, and he played really well and looked really good. That offensive line was phenomenal. They gave Justin Fields time to throw. They had enormous holds for Breece Hall to be aggressive and to burst out big runs. The line was really good, and they need to be really good again against the Bills if they have any chance of winning this game, because Breece was electric, and they need him to have another type of game that he did against the Steelers if they have any shot against the Bills. This once again has to be 30 plus carries for this offense. You want to have him get even more looks in the passing game, I would say. He had 2 catches. You want to get that up. And overall, can you get a better performance from Braylon Allen? Can you get more out of Isaiah Davis? Maybe, but if it's just the Breece Hall show, it's the Breece Hall show. That's fine. Allen ends up grading as one of the worst running backs in week 1, and that's even with him scoring a touchdown. 7 of his 8 yards or 8 of his 9 yards, whatever it was on the touchdown run where his offensive line is pushing the pile for part of it. He was chopping his feet. He's not making a cut and going. He was just very slow in the backfield and really struggled, and it can't be that it was just because they were blocking better for Breece Hall than they were for Braylon Allen. And so he needs to have a better week 2 because they need to own the time of possession. If this game is a shootout, I think the Jets are in trouble. We saw Josh Allen and the Bills, win a crazy shootout week 1. We know that Josh Allen, the reigning MVP, has that in him. And even more importantly, if the Bills are up big early, if this is a 13-0 game or a 14-0 game, then I think the Jets are in a lot of trouble. So a lot of reaction and potentially overreaction to week 1. Again, I'm happy the Aaron Rodgers narrative is done. I was sick of it. I'm glad it's over. Now the Jets can move on. And the Jets need to find a way to steal a win against the Bills or against the Bucks, so then they can go ahead and take care of business against the Dolphins and find their way to 2-2. And the season's not over if they lose against the Bills. The season's not over if they start 0-3. Their schedule does open up in the second half of the year, but their offense played well enough to beat anyone in week 1, so they have to show more of the same. We'll keep an eye on the injuries. Kene Nwangwu, as I said, hamstring. He has not practiced yet. I'm recording this early on a Thursday morning, so we won't know about the Thursday practices till after this comes out. Mason Taylor has not practiced with an ankle, and again, he looks like he might be a concern. He's questionable for Sunday as well. Jay Tufele, he was listed as personal and then as well as illness, and he did not practice. Michael Carter, he had a limited showing at practice. McCrary Ball had a calf, but he practiced. And then Okafor, who is the 6th offensive lineman right now, he had a hand injury, but he practiced as well. Coming up, we're going to talk to Blake Parnham, and Blake is the face of the Helmet Bar in Keswick, Ontario. If you're not familiar with the Helmet Bar, please look them up online. They have garnered a cult following. Basically, a bunch of folks from Canada go there into Blake's family's backyard to sit at a bar that's shaped like an enormous Bills helmet. They make a bunch of food that's, built around who the opposition is going to be. So I'm sure Blake will get into what some New York style food they'll be eating. And overall, Blake's just a great fan. He does a lot of these podcasts and is just a great face for Bills Mafia. So we have Blake on to break down the matchup coming up. Just take the pulse of the Bills fan as they are looking to take a leap and become, a team that plays for a Super Bowl and finally makes that next leap and makes it to a Super Bowl. As we get into that, the clip for this week for the Bills, it's throwing it back to 2002, and that's Chad Morton when he had 2 kickoff returns for a touchdown. It seems fitting, the week that the Jets cut a kick returner because he fumbles a kickoff. He's also a guy, Xavier Gipson, who had a historic return, or at least a famous return against the Bills to win a game. Chad Morton did that in 2002. The Jets, of course, would go on to lose the next 4 games, and 3 of those were blowouts. Then Herm Edwards gives his famous "You play to win the game" speech at a press conference. We all know 2002 ends with a division championship. That's their last division championship. So let's take a listen and a look at Chad Morton's game back in 2002, the opening week against the Bills.
High end-over-end kick that Morton will take left side of the 2, out to the 10. Left sideline to the 15, has a lane to the 20, still on his feet to the 30, cuts it back to the 40, midfield 50. Morton caught from behind, no, breaks the tackle. He'll go all the way. Touchdown, Jets. And just like that, like lightning, the Jets right back in the game. Morton at the 4, comes forward to the 15, to the 20, stutter steps to his left, breaks 2 tackles at the 40. He's out to midfield. It's a foot race. Deep in Bills territory to the 20. Morton to the 5. Into the end zone. Touchdown. The Jets have won the game in overtime. What an opening win for the Jets.
Welcome back to the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. We have a really exciting guest this week on the podcast. As we all know, every week we want to get the perspective from the opposing team as we see who the Jets are up against each week. Obviously, a big divisional matchup against the Bills. And this week we have the face of the Helmet Bar in Keswick, Ontario. It is a cult-followed bar in a house out across the border. They have tens of thousands of followers across social media. They get great turnouts. And Blake Parnham, who's with me, is the face of that and a super fan of the Bills. And so just to start, Blake, thanks so much for joining today.
Hey, thanks for inviting me on. I guess I'm the world that you're against.
That's right. This week you are the world. And, I've been to many a Jets-Bills game at MetLife Stadium and the old Giants Stadium. Bills fans travel well. They travel well to the stadium, but apparently they travel well to you and your bar out in Keswick. So just to start, can you tell me about the history of the Helmet Bar, kind of how it got started and what the experience is like every week for Bills games?
Yeah, so the Bills Helmet Bar is something that myself and my family have built, constructed, kind of developed over the past several years. It's a 12-foot wide by 12-foot tall red Bills helmet in our backyard that my dad initially acquired back, I think it was in 1995. He was an elementary school teacher, and through a variety of weird circumstances, one of the sports liquidation stores was going out of business, and it was the checkout counter. Like, it was built up against a wall, and
wow.
They tried to get rid of all of their assets, couldn't find anybody who would want this amazing, ridiculous thing. One of the moms of one of his kids was there, and he, like me, I'm also a teacher, puts Bill stickers on all the great assignments. And she remembered that her kid's her kid's student was a teacher, loved the Bills, and so she got it for him for free, and it just sat in our backyard for almost 25 years. And it was really when the Raptors won the championship. It was June. We're outside. It's lovely out. Watching the championship. We're all into the beers, and I can see this giant Bills helmet in the back of the property. It was serving as our woodshed, and I decided, hey, maybe we should make a bar out of that. And then we did, and Since then, we've hosted tailgates for Bills games for the past few years and have met so many great people who just come to our house and watch Bills games with us. And it's been really fun.
That's awesome. And Kevin Hayes from Spectrum News in Buffalo did a great piece on you all, and I'll link out to that on social media too. It's definitely worth checking out. A feel-good story about a fan base that, I've got to say, I spent some time in Buffalo last year for a friend's wedding, talking to Bills fans about the pain of being a Jets fan. And my experience has always been that Bills fans are just nice people. They're nice folks. I don't know if it's because of, much like the Jets, a lot of the history kind of revolves around being a lovable loser. But even with the Bills in their prime right now, looking to take the next step and, being a true Super Bowl contender and finally making that leap, I find Bills fans to be really agreeable. And it's certainly annoying as I watch Josh Allen beat up the Jets over the last 5 years. Can you just characterize, first off, the Bills fans who come to your place to watch games? I know they travel a really long way to get there, but what's just the sense of the folks who are Bills fans and what it's like to be a Bills fan?
Yeah, so most people who come here live in Canada. Most people are Canadian like us. The first gentleman reached out to us during COVID and said, "Hey, I haven't missed a Bills game in 18 years. Home or away. And I get it. COVID's a thing. There's shutdowns and lockdowns and stuff like that. But he's like, I want to come and watch the Bills game with you guys. Like, can I do that?" And it was a week 1 game against the Jets. And at that time, it was, is Darnold going to take the step? Is Josh going to take the step? And we were kind of nervous for that game. But we a family just had a meeting and went, okay, this is objectively weird. Like, some guy wants to come to our house. And then we said, what's the worst that happens? Sure. And he's become one of our really good friends. And into a broader perspective of Bills fans, I do think it comes from us being lovable losers. But I think it also stems from, like, in the ESPN production, the Four Falls Buffalo, Tim Russert says it pretty well. He's like, Miami's got the beaches, and Dallas has huge buildings, and Washington has the government, and New York is New York. Buffalo has the Bills, and that's it. And I think between them being terrible forever but good now, and the Sabres seemingly being terrible for the rest of eternity, I think that it inspires Bills fans to try to be, hey, what are you going to do? We lost again. And no one has ever lost a Bills tailgate. I'll tell you that, though.
That is true. And listen, they focus all of their energy into and anger that you have, obviously, towards tables and beer cans and all the things that you can destroy. That's not, other people, which I think is good. In general, right now, what is the sense for Bills fans about this team, about the season? Is there a it's now or never kind of mentality? Another year of McDermott. I know nationally, he's someone who's been maligned a little bit, but just in general, is the feeling this is the team, this is the best chance they've had in a while?
I certainly think it is. I think that they've timed it out really well with mitigating dead cap and building a really good roster for the last year of the old stadium and the first year of the new stadium. It's these 2 years, in my opinion. And yeah, McDermott has been maligned, specifically nationally. I think a lot of it's unfair. 13 seconds is fair. Totally. But
Sure.
Beyond that, I think that narrative lingers. The fact that he's a defensive-minded head coach in a league of offensive gurus speaks to that as well. But I think this is the best roster that they've produced under the McDermott and Brandon Beane regime. I really do. I think that the weapons are better than they've been in the past, even with a lack of Stephon Diggs. Our defense is extremely suspect, but we're relying on 2 rookie defensive tackles that have a high pedigree, but are rookies and got, torched on the ground last week. And our safeties are something to be concerned about. But this is a world where the rest of the AFC seems beatable. The boogeyman Chiefs didn't look great, and they have the Eagles this week. The Ravens should have won that game, and I still think the Ravens are a better team than the Bills. But hey, 1-0 is 1-0, and yeah, we'll see what happens. But I do think that this is a year that step needs to be taken, and I think it might be.
Yeah, and the division has been not a cakewalk for the Bills, but they've owned it solidly. We're at 5 division titles in a row. This division is not good. The Jets are hopefully an up-and-coming team, but we know to not believe it till we see it with the Jets. Miami seems to be a place where they could have the first coaching change. And although New England, everyone, including me, felt New England would take a step up, obviously week 1, they kind of fall on their face. But the rest of the conference does seem ready to be had. The Chiefs always seem to figure it out no matter how bad they look, and I expect them to start off 0-2 and struggle against the Eagles. But in terms of this offense, talk about the skill players around Josh Allen. Do they have the kind of weapons they need in order to finally put together a championship caliber offense in the playoffs too?
I think so. I think that this offense was objectively 3 points away from overtime in the AFC Championship game and a touchdown away from going to the Super Bowl. A Super Bowl that I think they probably would have been smashed in just like the Chiefs. But, hey, I think that Josh Palmer is better than last year's Amari Cooper. I think last year's Amari Cooper had lost a step. And more importantly, I think Keon Coleman this year is far better than Keon Coleman last year. He looked like a legitimate wide receiver one against the Ravens. Whether that's the Ravens secondary or whether that's Keon's jump, we'll find out maybe on the weekend if he has to go against Sauce Gardner and gets held up, which I do think might happen. We'll contextualize it there. But I think more important than either of those is the development of former first-round tight end Dalton Kincaid. He's been hurt a little bit, but the reason why, in my opinion, he hasn't been able to stay on the field is because he genuinely didn't know how to block. And you can't have a tight end on the field, specifically a tight end 2, when you've got Dawson Knox who can't block. And there were a few times against the Ravens where we ran pull plays and pitch plays where he's out there lead blocking and handling a corner or a safety or a nickelback. And I think that that's going to keep him on the field to do really, really special Travis Kelce-esque things at the tight end position. And Cook is Cook. Our backfield is our backfield. Josh is the MVP. And I think that the weapons on offense will be able to score. And I think they're going to need to score with the way that our defense held up against a really good running team. And now that we're playing against a really good running team, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the key to this game with the Jets is going to be, can they rush the ball 35, 37 times? Can they win time of possession? Really do everything they did against the Steelers except have a special teams turnover and, be really leaky in the secondary. And a high-scoring game, I think, would scare Jets fans because no one wants to go toe-to-toe with Josh Allen at the end of a game. He's proven that he can win those types of games. But in the secondary, where the Jets have a weaker wide receiver core outside of Garrett Wilson, what do you see the Bills' approach being in this game? Are they just going to be stacking the box and trying to take away the run, or based on how they looked against the Ravens, what adjustments do you expect from the team?
As scary as it sounds to give up 40 points, I think they're going to run back the same game plan. I think that we said it at the tailgate out back on Sunday. I think the Jets are the Temu Ravens, and that's not an affront to the Jets. Justin Fields is escapable. He's not as accurate as Lamar Jackson because Lamar Jackson is a 2-time MVP, and Breece Hall is not Derrick Henry, but he's a really good running back. So I think the Bills have almost always gone base nickel with Taron Johnson, their nickel back, who's very, very talented. Many times on Sunday, they ran a base 4-3 with Matt Milano and Dorian Williams outside and Terrell Bernard being their middle linebacker. I think they're going to do that a lot on early downs to try to mitigate the running game. You mentioned the secondary and how the Jets secondary was leaky. Our secondary is quite leaky. Christian Benford is a very, very good corner number 1. We are starting a 6th-round rookie on the other side of him in Dorian Strong, who was not targeted. There's no evaluation. He gave up 0 passes on 0 attempts. Our safeties are slow and weak, and I think that we're going to try to make it so that Justin Fields wins or loses the game. And that's going to be an interesting proposition for you to probably hear as a Jets fan, but I think that that's what we're going to try to do defensively.
Yeah, I mean, over the last 18 starts now for Justin Fields, he's been a top 15, somewhere between 12 and 15 quarterback. His numbers have been good. He graded out really well last week. And for me, which was exciting, and I'm curious to see how it goes against a younger, vulnerable secondary, he's throwing in tight windows with a lot of zip. It's something, honestly, that we didn't see from Aaron Rodgers last year, where he's not making the aggressive laser throws down the middle of the field. And overall, when the Jets have had success against the Bills, which they've had some against Josh Allen at MetLife Stadium, it's been their ability to turn him over and been his ability to keep him scrambling but not being too aggressive on the run. Is this a game where you see Josh taking off and running a lot? Is this, do you think he has any feelings about playing in MetLife? Is that a storyline at all that he has turned the ball over quite a bit? Or is this just, hey, Josh Allen, just be your MVP self and we'll make it work?
I think that the beginning of the game against the Ravens, we expected pressure, and that's why you saw a bunch of little swing passes and screens and pitches and to try to get the ball out of Josh's hands fast. Our offensive line is very good, and I think that if they can handle a very good defensive line, we're going to be fine. If they can't, then I can see that happening. I can see Josh scrambling, trying to make things work. And yeah, as you said, the success that the Jets have had, and there's been plenty at MetLife, that really weird, nice day a couple years ago where they lost on that deep ball that probably should have been caught, and then of course the Monday nighter.
Interference.
Yeah, whatever, but. Yeah, I think that's obviously going to be a focus for the Jets to try to get those turnovers and hopefully is a focus for our offensive game plan to mitigate the crazy plays that inevitably happen when Josh has to really push.
Yeah. So you mentioned this at the beginning. There are changes happening with the Bills home, and this is the last season rather, at the Ralph. And what's the feeling from Bills fans? Is it just pure excitement? The new stadium looks incredible. Or is there, any sadness about the end of this run? Or just walk me through what Bills fans think about having a new home coming their way.
Oh, I think there's a ton of nostalgia around the Ralph. I mean, it's not a great place, but it's ours. And whenever that happens, you'd move out of a house that is a dump, but it's your house. It kind of sucks. So there's certainly nostalgia. In the summertime, they do training camp in Rochester, but the Bills always do one training camp day or evening at the stadium in Buffalo. So the team reached out, thankfully, and offered, the tickets are free, but they gave us some. And
Nice.
So I took my dad, and we sat, everybody's down low trying to get a glimpse of Josh. We sat in the nosebleeds in his seasons that he used to have until 2006 when his season ticket partner died. So that was a really cool nostalgic moment for us to kind of relive all the memories that he had taken through that stadium and that I grew up in. So I think that's going to happen to a lot of Bills fans as well throughout the season. But there is certainly excitement about the next one. It is looking amazing. It's apparently built like with very sides so that the fans kind of feel like they're on top of the stadium or on top of the grass, which is actual grass, not turf, which is nice, particularly when I'm talking to somebody with the MetLife turf, the Demon turf.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it'll be exciting. The concern for me is it is a little smaller than the Ralph. I think about by 8,000 people, and the PSLs are keeping a lot of the longtime Bills fans, Bills season ticket holders away, which kind of sucks in a small blue collar city. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm certainly excited for it next year.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Jets and Giants fans know all about PSLs, and probably more comparably to the Giants and Bills fans where you have season ticket waiting lists, right? And for the Giants, you had an 80-year waiting list wiped away when they built the new stadium because of PSLs. And in my experience, it makes a 300 and top level section even that more fun because you get the real ones up there. And I got to say, when I see all these new stadiums open, I just get jealous as these beautiful stadiums open up around the country and the Jets play in a, air-conditioned unit in a swamp. But we still show up. We still enjoy it. I'll be there Sunday, as I'm always there. Another question I like to ask guests when we have these matchups are, when you think Jets-Bills, just what are some of the things that pop into your head? What are some of the good memories, bad memories that you have when you think about these two teams going at?
I think that when I think about Bills-Jets games, I think about upsets. I think about a team that should not win the game is just a pesky team and somehow does. And I mean that for the Jets recently against the Bills, and I mean that for the Bills back in the Mark Sanchez years, and that I remember that week 17 Fitz needs to come into Western New York and win and doesn't.
Yep.
So I fear the Jets in that way because I've seen it from both sides too many times where a team that has no business competing against a better team, an objectively better franchise, somehow, some way wins the game.
Yeah, no, it's the Bills-Jets rivalry is an interesting one. For me, that 2015 last week with Rex Ryan as the coach of the Bills, and it's the last winning season the Jets had was 2015, so we're 10 years now without a winning season. That one's a bad one, but when I think about the teams, and I think we're around the same age, growing up, whether it's the Chad Morton kick return touchdown game in 2002 that leads into the Jets losing 4 in a row, and then Herm Edwards says you play to win the game. That kind of sparked all of that. Or even one interesting one for me is the Brett Favre season, when it looked like in 2008 the Jets were about to play themselves out of the playoffs completely. They play a game against the Bills at the Meadowlands. Brett Favre has his last okay game. Sean Ellis gets a strip sack fumble that saves the season, and then the Jets, of course, lose to Seattle, and it all goes crashing down. But Bills games always seem to be an inflection point on the schedule. Recently, the Jets have had a lot more success at MetLife. Going to Buffalo has been a disaster for this team for sure. But this is an interesting one this week. I think, for the Jets, they want to prove that they can replicate what was the highest graded offense in the NFL last week. Playing against a team that can score 40 points without thinking too much. What do you think are some of the keys to this game? When you think about a Bills win, what do you think it's going to look like? And then on the contrary, if you think this goes south for the Bills and the Jets have an opportunity, how does that look for you?
I think we're going to know what's happening early in the game. And I say that completely knowing that the opposite happened on Sunday Night Football. I think that if the Bills take a lead and make the Jets throw the ball, it's not going to be a fun day for you guys at the stadium. Comparatively, I think that if you can run the ball and go up by 2 scores, it's going to be challenging for us to come back because you can tee off on Josh and because it takes out James Cook for a lot of it. My criticism when James Cook was going through this contract dispute was the fact that through the last drive against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, he wasn't on the field for many of those snaps, and he wasn't on the field because he doesn't know how to pass block. So taking him off the field because they're passing situations would be a huge advantage, not just to the Jets, but to any team that plays the Bills. And you do that by going up, and you do that by making Josh play hero ball, and he's shown that he can do that. But I think that against, hopefully for you guys, good enough defense, that's the key to success for the Jets.
Yeah, if the game relies on, the safeties and corners not named Sauce Gardner, I think Jets fans are going to be very worried. I think you're going to see a switch in the secondary, whether it's Stevens at corner getting demoted or Tony Adams losing some time to rookie from Alabama, Malachi Moore. I think Josh Allen's going to see a few different looks, but I agree. If the Jets can get after Josh Allen rushing 4, and Will McDonald can have another great game, and Quinnen Williams can be an all-pro type guy, let's, Sherwood and Quincy Williams do their thing from the middle of the field. That's the equation. But you're right. If this turns into where the Jets are down 14-0 quickly, I think I might be leaving early from that game. And I've left early at a few Bills games, because sometimes they turn south real quick. The one thing I always know about Bills-Jets games, there's going to be a lot of Bills fans there. Bills fans just always seem to rise to the occasion and be good-spirited folks, and I look forward to seeing them, hopefully leaving MetLife maybe a little upset, but overall it should be good. Blake, I just want to thank you for joining me today. It's been a great chat, and you mentioned before we hopped on, it seems like you'll have a good crew for a 1 o'clock Sunday game, so tell them, Gangrene Nation does say hi, and we hope it's a good game on Sunday.
Will do. That sounds great. One of the things that we do here at the Helmet Bar is we try to theme our menu based on opponent.
Oh,
so we've got some New York City style pizzas, some Coney Island dogs. So we'll be eating well. You guys have one of the better cuisines in the NFL. I'll put it that way.
There you go. I'm curious how that pizza would turn out. I think hopefully you post it on social media. We'll check it out and we'll give
Absolutely.
the New York perspective of it. But Blake, thanks so much for hopping on today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we're going to take a break here and come back and look at the keys of the game coming up against Buffalo.
Rossman under pressure, lost the football. Still on the loose, picked up by the Jets, inside the 5, to the end zone, touchdown. Sean Ellis. Do you believe that? J.P. Lossman has to protect the football. The blitz coming from behind by Elam. He knocks the ball loose, and Sean Ellis, the ball's bouncing around, but he gets a great hop as it bounces up to waist level right in front of him. Lossman not feeling the pressure from behind, and Elam gets his right hand down on the ball, knocks it loose. Sean Ellis had it once, but here's the bounce. Comes right back at him. And look at that hit he puts on Langston Walker. What a great play by the longest tenured New York Jet, Sean Ellis.
Welcome back to the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I want to thank Blake for joining us today. It was great talking to him. A really cool thing they've got going on north of the border there. Bills fans, they're just nice folks. They really are. And there'll be a lot of them at MetLife Stadium. Like I said, the Bills fans always travel well. And what I'm hoping is going to be another really competitive game for the Jets. The equation for them winning is the same. Run the ball all day. When Justin Fields does throw, take advantage of that young secondary that Blake, drew out for us, and, find the opportunities to take shots downfield to Garrett Wilson, mix in the tight ends a little bit more. You'll get Breece Hall going. Before we move on to the 5 things to watch for the Jets in this game against the Bills, just want to tell you what you just heard. So I had mentioned it with Blake, the 2008 Jets-Bills game at Giants Stadium. The Jets are playing for the playoff lives in the Brett Favre season. Of course, the Jets started 8-3 that year, and then they only would go on to win one more game. And it was a disappointing year. It led to the Mark Sanchez, Rex Ryan years, which, we got a couple of good ones there. But that Bills game, I was at the game with my dad. We're sitting behind the end zone, and the play I'll never forget, although the Sean Ellis touchdown was incredible, Brett Favre, who we later would learn was playing hurt, he probably should not have been playing with that hurt shoulder. They're at like the 15-yard line, maybe 20-yard line. He does a naked boot, very similar to what Justin Fields scored on, and there is no one within 35 yards of him. I mean, he is running with the ball by himself like he is playing on a different field, and he only has 20 yards, maybe 15 yards to go. And I've never seen a man run so slowly in my entire life. And he gets tackled. That was the moment I realized, Brett Favre was what I thought was washed. He looked like a broken player. He, of course, would go on to a championship game with the Vikings the next year, but that really symbolized the struggle that was the end of that season for the Jets. That game is essentially over. The Bills just have to run out the clock in that game. They instead drop back to pass, and Jason Elam gets a fumble. Sean Ellis, as we heard, he was the longest tenured Jet. He was a great Jet. He rumbles for a touchdown. The place goes insane. It's one of my favorite celebrations I've had as a Jets fan at the stadium. They then, of course, would no-show against the Seahawks and only put up 3 points the next week, effectively eliminating them for the playoffs. They would lose against the Dolphins in the last week, and so went the Brett Favre era. But a lot of great Jets-Bills moments, a lot of interesting ones. We didn't even play anything about Aaron Rodgers tearing his Achilles. It feels, too recent and too painful. Here we are, Jets-Bills week 2 of the 2025 season. So the 5 things to watch for this Jets-Bills game coming up at MetLife Stadium, 1 o'clock. Number 5, kick return game. Very simple. Xavier Gibson no longer on the team. I say let Arian Smith and Isaiah Davis rip. Let Davis return some punts. Give them both a shot on kick returns, obviously. And these are 2 young playmakers. Give them an opportunity to make a difference in these games, as long as they don't turn over the ball. No more special teams turnovers. For punt returns, a great play might just be throwing your hand up in the air and catching the ball, and that's it. Number 4, I want to see more than 2 receptions for Breece Hall this game. He needs to have 5 to 8 targets. He just looks so good right now. There is no reason to not feed him the ball as often as possible. Number 3, the secondary. It's simple. Malachi Moore needs to play. Tony Adams cannot play 100% of the defensive snaps this game. Can Cisco keep guys in front of him? Sauce Gardner did travel with DK Metcalf a little bit in the game week 1. Will he travel with Keon Coleman, or will Coleman be able to feast on Stevens? The secondary is a little bit of a mess right now. It is certainly the weakest part of that defense, and they need to put together a much stronger showing against a team that scored over 40 points against the Ravens. The Ravens also don't have a great secondary. Number 2, speaking of bad secondaries, Justin Fields has to feast off of this one. I want to see him running the ball effectively again and throw the ball downfield, replicate basically what he had week 1. He was able to pick apart that defense because of the good showing from the offensive line. They are not facing a pass rush that is as daunting as the Steelers showed last week, so they should be able to have another good performance, and Justin Fields needs to play mistake-free football. And the number one thing, it's very simple. You are playing the reigning MVP, Josh Allen. Josh Allen in his career against the Jets is 9-4. Really, he's 9-3. In 2019, he only played a few possessions and then was getting a rest because the Bills were already locked into the playoffs. So in the 3 losses where he's played the full game, he has 1 touchdown and 7 interceptions, and he's sacked 13 times. In the wins, he has 9 wins. He's only sacked 14 times across those 9 wins, 15 touchdowns, 4 picks. You got to get after him. This front four needs to be aggressive again. Will McDonald needs to be chasing him all around the field. Quinnen Williams needs to be making sacks. I want to see multiple Quincy Williams uppercut celebrations in this game. We see that Josh Allen can be dangerous when he's running around the backfield, but that's also when he can make a lot of mistakes. Find ways to turn the ball over, which they did not do against the Steelers, and continue to get pressures. You get 5 sacks on them again, and you make it so that they're scrambling behind the line of scrimmage. This is a good opportunity for the Jets to take this win. So, big opportunity for the Jets to even up at 1-1 against their divisional rival, against the Bills. Sunday, 1 o'clock, MetLife Stadium. I will be there. I have all of my bruises from my fall that I took, so I will make sure to take my time and be careful where I step when I step into my row. I'm looking forward to it. This has been episode 12 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. Thank you so much for listening.